This never happened to the other fella.
And welcome to Drive and Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into today's movie, you can head over to patreon.com if you want any bonus special episodes from us. And just for $5 a month, you can help support the show and you get some fun episodes over there. You can go to patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturepodcast, or the link is in the description. But getting into today's movie, it's another James Bond movie. We're talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, directed by Peter Hunt.
Not his brother Mike.
Yeah, not his brother Mike. It's Peter. You know, you might know Mike from some other stuff, but
But this is I was going to say this is not the first time we brought up Peter Hunt, because
yeah, true.
He is the famed editor and he is in the director's chair.
Yes, yeah. He edited all these movies, and this is his first time on one of these movies, and it's the first time for our Bond as well. So Sean Connery is out of the picture for now. They did hire George Lazenby, who was just a male model at the time, and kind of weaseled his way into becoming James Bond. And this is his one and only outing, and I'm pretty sure this is Peter Hunt's also one and only time directing. So this movie's kind of like a weird thing that happened, because a Sean Connery movie comes out right after this one. So it's just kind of like this weird thing that happened between movies.
And this one has a pretty different tone, I would say. This one goes in a lot of different places out where we're not really used to.
Yeah, I agree. It was like watching a different Bond film. And I guess before we hop into it, just like talking about history and feelings behind this movie, this one particularly is known as kind of like the black sheep, like one of the big black sheeps of the franchise, because people don't really like George Lazenby. People don't really like this movie because tonally it's different. I've also heard it get like kind of a reassessment too. There's some people that love this movie. Some people consider this one of the best Bonds. Some people consider it one of the worst. And this is my first time seeing this, so I kind of went in, I didn't know how I was going to feel. I actually quite like this one. I don't think it ranks up there as some of the best, like as far as Connery goes, but I actually really enjoyed this one.
No, it's good. I think the biggest issue with this movie is that there's so much expectations and so much weight that this movie is carrying before the movie even starts. You kind of have in your mind all these expectations that you're thinking that's going to happen, and some of them happen, some of them don't. And I think that kind of hampers it a little bit. If this movie was not a James Bond movie, if this was just like a spy movie, like some type of, I think this movie would be a lot more beloved.
I agree. I think like if it was just kind of, because, you know, it came out during the spy boom of movies, it'd be like one of the better ones. But yeah, I think just having that James Bond behind it kind of killed a lot of it, especially having to go up against Sean Connery. George Lazenby is not an actor, or at least he wasn't an actor before this movie.
No.
And that's a lot to take over after Sean Connery, because like I think about Sean Connery's James Bond, and he is James Bond. Still to this day, I think he's like the best. Like he's done it so well and so memorable. I couldn't even imagine when he was the only James Bond having to go up after him. There's so much there. And yeah, I mean, George, he brings good things to the table, but he is no Sean Connery, unfortunately.
No, I mean, he's not bad in the movie, but
no.
But for me, it's just like there's something missing from this one. And I don't know if it's like that extra ounce of charisma, or if it's like that real suaveness to it. Like for me, like one thing I kind of noticed right away is when he's at MI6 and when he's talking to Moneypenny. And, you know, like for me, it was always like Sean Connery and Moneypenny, you know, they are always kind of like, it was very, very flirtatious. Like you can really sense like the tension in the room. Like there was some type of history between these two characters. And this one, they don't really have that. Like when they were talking, it more came off as like they were like old friends. It's like, oh, hey, Moneypenny, I love you, that type of thing.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a lost love kind of deal. But I don't know if that's him or the script, because the writing for this is just really different. I mean, they're more basing it off of Ian Fleming's book than they were like the movies kind of took a different turn, more gadgets. This is very much like the book. So I'm not sure if Moneypenny and James had more of a connection in that one, but that's what it felt like. I mean, even the pre-title sequence is a bit weird, where where he's like driving along, and our Bond girl in this one, Tracy, played by Diana Rigg, kind of skates by and tries to kill herself in the ocean, and he like rescues her out of the ocean just by chance. And then a big action scene happens on the ocean. And I mean, even this fight scene feels so different the way it's shot. It's really fast paced, out in the water. And George Lazenby is actually a martial artist. He knows judo, I believe. And you can tell he's just throwing this dude around over his back and everything. So I don't know. It just had a different feel to it.
Yeah. And it's a lot more, like you said, it's a lot more fast paced. It's a lot more subtle too, in terms of like, and the other ones, it's like, oh, how we got to get that big hook in the beginning or whatever. And it was like, okay, we killed James Bond multiple times in the beginning, or there's some type of grand action sequence. What I do like is that they keep this Bond in the shadows, kind of. You don't really see his face until like right after he rescues her. And the one of the only times in the entire series Bond breaks the fourth wall. And looks directly at the camera and said, "This never happened to the other fellow."
It's a silly moment, but I kind of don't like it, because it kind of doesn't make sense, because this movie, they try so hard to push that James Bond, this is the same guy, different actor, same guy. Yeah, he brings out all of his gadgets from before, and like, I mean, I watched some behind the scenes stuff as well, and they were saying that this is the same Bond, and I was like, but that line, I know it's a fourth wall break, silly moment, but I was like, that doesn't go with the story then.
So I've always had this kind of my own headcanon towards the series, and like I always feel like they're different in my head. That each actor is a different James Bond. They both have the same name, Bond, because that's kind of like a code name and everything, and they have similar backgrounds and everything, but each one kind of brings something very different to the table when they do this. Like, Sean Connery is like the OG one. George Lazenby is kind of like the younger, more handsome one, and then the Roger Moore is like the more comedic one, and so on and so forth. And for me, it makes sense. Like the other one just kind of hung it up, like Sean Connery kind of hung it up, and this new James Bond is the new guy in town. And when I get towards the ending, like how they end this movie, it makes sense why that particular character didn't continue on. Like this James Bond wouldn't continue on.
Yeah, and a bunch of other issues behind the scenes, because I mean, would make this all come together. But I will say, so we, after this whole the title sequence, the theme song here is weird, because it's either, people say it's We Have All the Time in the World, the Louis Armstrong song, or the instrumental, just on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Pick or choose. I do like the theme for this one. It's good. The Louis Armstrong song, it's good too. It's a classic.
It's good, but why didn't they put it in the opening sequence though?
I don't know. I think that's so weird. Maybe they thought it was too slow of a song to open this.
But
they have slow Bond songs.
I was about to say, like, Goldfinger's not like a fast paced song, and and when we get into the other one, The Spy Who Loved Me, that's a very slow song. And,
true.
But I think what I read is they went with the instrumental for this one because We Have All the Time in the World, which the lyrics for that make sense towards the end of the movie, but they didn't want to go for it in the intro because it didn't have the words "On Her Majesty's Secret Service" in it. Or something along those lines. It didn't have the title of the movie in the song.
Which later on down the line, that's not going to matter very much.
Well, yeah, and that's, if that is 100% the case, then that's a very silly rule.
I agree.
But as far as the visuals go, where it's like in the shape of an hourglass, it's like a woman in the shape of an hourglass. Looks pretty neat.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting for them to like, this is the new Bond, and then it shows old clips of old Bond movies. And that's like the whole thing. But I think it's a cool visual. It's like, okay, this is all the stuff that's led us to this point. And then George Lazenby, our new James Bond, ends up in a hotel, and this hotel room is so silly. There's a bed on the patio, no roof. That seems so gross. Like that could get nasty so fast, depending on what type of day you're having.
I mean, they better change those sheets like once every 6 hours.
I'd hope so. Like you got room service coming in the middle of the night to lift you up and change your sheets.
You've just been covered with like, I mean, we live in Florida. Can you imagine sleeping outside now? You'd be covered in pollen by the time you woke up.
And sweaty from all of like the humidity. Like I'm the type of, I have to have a ceiling fan running when I'm sleeping. Like I could not.
Even when it's cold outside, I have to have some type of air circulation.
Yeah, but no, that doesn't stop James Bond. A little bit later on, he ends up, in normal fashion, he ends up sleeping with a woman outside on this bed, and he wakes up naked in the bed. We don't see it, but he's just out in the open, like, yeah, I just had sex last night out here on the patio.
Okay. As you do.
But here's where we get more into the Bond girl here, Tracy, who she's great. She's awesome. Best part of this movie.
She so far is hands down the best Bond girl for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I really, if there was something that if you told me about it, I'd be like, oh, this wouldn't work. And it does, is that Bond and her have a romance. And I think like if we did this before, like with Sean Connery, maybe it wouldn't have worked. But here, I actually think it works pretty well. I actually really like their romance.
It works really well because, like you said, if Sean Connery was doing that, honestly, I wouldn't have been buying it. I'm like, no. Because Sean Connery's Bond is very much just like, I'm going to sleep with you, and then it's just and that's it type of thing. And like he's a very one-track mind type of person. But since there's this newer Bond that's in here, we don't really know what personality he's bringing. We assume it's the same, but since it's this newer one, we're like, oh, okay, well maybe this Bond is a lot more emotional, and like it gets actually attached to him, because the main guy, that Tracy's dad, Draco, who's like a mob boss, or like is basically bribes James Bond to marry his daughter. He's like, please protect her, and if you marry her, I'll give you £1 million.
Yeah, and I love that James Bond was like, I don't need money. I need to know where Blofeld is. I need to know where my arch nemesis is at. But this scene had me laugh because it's so old timey, like where he's like, she needs a man to dominate her, and that's what he says. Yeah, and it's like she needs, she's too wild. She needs to become a housewife. But he says that, but I think they do fall in love, and she still ends up being a pretty strong character, which I think is good, because it could have gone really south. But that's what I like, is the bribe happens, and then they meet up, and she finds out about the deal that they've made, so she's upset. But then Bond, even after getting the information he needs, he's still like, hey, we could still try this.
He is actually growing fond of a woman, and outside of her physical attraction.
Yeah, and that's when we get the we have all the time in the world montage, where it's a montage. It's like a romance montage, which is so weird for Bond, but I like it.
It's a romance movie. Each Bond movie tells tackles a different genre. This is the romance one.
Yeah, this is the romance one, and I kind of like it. It's a really sweet little montage. We skipped over. You talked about him meeting up with Moneypenny, but he almost quits for a moment.
Yeah. And then the credits start rolling when he hands in his notice.
Yeah, well, if I'm not gonna do this, then I'm done. Wouldn't that be funny if that's where James Bond ended? Well,
it's like I go 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, well, that's what George Lazenby says, that his agents told him to not make any more James Bonds because the series was going downhill. And but there's so many conflicting stories on why he was fired and everything. But I think that's so silly because even if it was going downhill, it made $80 million on a $9 million budget. You keep doing it.
Right. Well, because You Only Live Twice was down compared to Thunderball, because we've said before Thunderball is one of the highest grossing movies ever at the time.
Yeah.
And that one, when this one came around, it still was a hit, but he was probably I guess we should kind of explain the cultural time period. This is the 60s and beginning of the counterculture movement. And movies like Easy Rider, The Graduate were coming out, where it's just these very different movies. It was just totally out of the cookie cutter mindset of Hollywood. And I think they were kind of seeing this trends. And supposedly George Lazenby was a real big hippie himself. And he didn't really, he saw Bond as a very archaic type of character.
Yeah, and that, I feel like that was part of it. I mean, if he didn't want to be a part of it, sure, but looking back on it now, I wonder if he regrets that choice. I'm sure he does.
Well, again, like you said, there's so many different accounts. There's accounts that he was fired. There's accounts that he quit. Because I don't know officially.
Yeah, I don't either, because I watched behind the scenes where everyone was like, oh, he was great on set. And then I'll watch a different behind the scenes where oh, no, he was hard to work with and he was kind of mean to everybody. And it's this movie is just so up in the air. I guess it adds to the mystique of this one because he's the only Bond to only be in one movie.
But I do think, but the one I saw where the little 40-minute documentary about this movie, the one I saw, he said he would have liked to have done more, and I think in the end, so and even Peter Hunt said he should have done more.
No, and I actually totally agree with that. I mean, we get to move on to Roger Moore soon, who brings his own thing to this, but I think if George Lazenby did some more Bond movies, he could have gotten better. I do, because I do like him, and I think he just needed more time with the character, and it could have gotten better.
Yeah, and since he only did one movie, they actually call him George Lazenby.
Lazenby, yeah, that's what everyone makes fun of him and laughs at him in the street. You were Bond once, but but no. So this movie is actually quite slow, which I don't mind too much because I do think it's interesting. There's not a lot of action because it kind of moves in from that, and he finds out where Blofeld is through this archaic fax machine, almost he cracks the safe and everything, and he ends up going to the mountains where he's living, and our arch villain is running an anti-allergy research center.
And he's he asks, because he says, well, which allergies? All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
I'm isn't that infinite?
Yeah, right. That anyone can be allergic to anything. There's so many allergies. But I guess I skipped over this. James Bond is also pretending to be somebody during these scenes, and he has this funky. It's a dubbed accent, right?
They actually got, because George Lazenby, like you said, he's an Australian man, and he does okay at producing an English accent for this one, but the character that he's doing has a much more higher voice, kind of, and so they dub over all of his lines when he's pretending to be that character.
Yeah, and I think the dubbing is a little, I get why they did it, but it's a little rough. I actually think I'm going to be a nitpicky here. I'm going to get into the nitty gritty, but I think the audio in this movie is really bad, and I think that kind of maybe is the reason why George Lazenby comes off as like a bad actor, because it's cut and the audio for me was always off on his voice, and I don't know, it just kind of threw me off a little.
No, and he doesn't have like this very unique voice, I'm gonna say. So
no.
I mean Sean Connery, I mean, it's just his voice, how he speaks is so, it's so different. I mean, anybody can do a Sean Connery accent, so it's just but this one he's just regular dude voice. And
you don't have a George Lazenby accent?
I don't.
I can't even think about what he's got. Yeah, he just sounds like a guy.
This wouldn't happen to the other fellow. No, I can't. No, take that part out.
But no, I do think, yeah, you're completely right with that. He doesn't bring like a unique voice, but you know who does bring a unique voice? Blofeld is replaced once again. They don't bring Donald Pleasance back, which we know we both liked a lot. He's replaced by Telly Savalas, who I think is really good in this as well. I mean, like, he's no Donald Pleasance, of course, but I get why they didn't bring him back. They said because Donald Pleasance wasn't very active at looking, and Telly there is more active looking, and it makes sense.
Blofeld does a lot more stunts in this movie. Like Blofeld is skiing, he's bobsledding, driving car. So it wouldn't be, I mean, not that Donald Pleasance is not exactly known for his physique.
No.
So, it would be a little silly, I guess, seeing him doing in a bobsled.
That would be funny if in Halloween he Dr. Loomis was like doing flips and stuff off of like roofs to get to Michael Myers.
Just as like a spin kick to Mike Myers.
I would pay money for that, actually. Kung Fu Halloween. But no, I think Telly, he's really good. I think he plays evil really well. There's something very sinister about him.
Oh yeah, he's great. I mean, there's other movies he's been in that I really liked. Like where what was it? The Dirty Dozen, I believe. Yeah. He plays like a complete psycho in that movie, and he's really good in those types of roles. So this one, I think he brings like a unique presence. But I mean, if you're gonna ask me which one I like better, it would be Donald Pleasance, just because Donald Pleasance just, he's got that villain voice. I mean, he's a villain in every movie for a reason. And they take away too Blofeld's scar that he has on his face.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, I know these movies, the way I look at Bond, kind of similar to you. I look at them in their own universe. They're kind of, each movie is like its own different thing, except for the Craig ones, of course, because those basically are all connected, but they kind of all do their own thing. And so, like, this one doesn't have a scar and all that. It's just small differences that all these things have. There's the 12 Deadly Angels that he has that are all they're all allergic women that he plans on mind controlling.
And Bond just has his pick of these women.
Yes, he does. But even though he's in a tight romance with Tracy, he still's like, you know what? I could sleep with a few of these women.
And he's in a kilt the whole time when he's there.
Yeah, probably the goofiest Bond has ever looked is in this one, is him wearing the kilt, and all the women think he's gay. Like, that's like the joke the whole time. Like, I didn't think you were interested in women at all.
Well, he's a total goof too, because they go out and they're playing curling, and Bond, they're like, "Oh, Sarah Hillary played curling with us," and he throws the slab or whatever it's called down there, and he just like, whoa, like just falls down with it, and everyone just starts laughing at him.
He plays his role really well. He should be maybe Bond should become an actor. That's what I'm getting out of this. Except he doesn't fool a couple people, because he goes to sleep with one of them, and then come to find out it's the head mistress, who is an old lady. Oh, so ugly. She's too old for
I know. Yeah, she's out of her. She's not in her 20s anymore. Gross.
Yeah, so it scars Bond for life. But I love that the program to get rid of their allergies is like a flashing light over the roof while they're sleeping, and it's like, you will eat chicken, you will love their flesh. Like that's wow, allergies are that easy to fix, huh?
So all those years I was allergic to pollen and dust, I could have just played a recording saying, you love pollen, you love dust.
Dust is your friend, breathe it in. Yeah, no, it's all in your mind, man. That's what they're saying. Allergies are in your brain. But there's all that. So like it's kind of slower, and it really, I think it picks up. And I think the ending of this movie is really good. Whenever it gets into the skiing, whenever Bond tries to escape because he gets found out and he ends up skiing down the hills. Oh, what's up?
Oh, there's one important thing you forgot to mention about this cabin. Well, first off, the cabin it's in the mountain, and they actually built that for real and turned it into like a restaurant afterwards. So it's like this rotating restaurant.
That's
and
cool.
they only agreed to let them do that if they built a helipad out there. So they had to spend all this money. But anyway, there is one thing we see in this cabin that tells us something about this Bond movie.
What's that?
This Bond movie, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? The best Christmas movie of all time.
Me and my family would sit down together and we'd always watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service every year.
Yeah, I don't, Nostalgia Critic was like, Die Hard's a Christmas movie. Screw you if you don't believe me. That's me on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I know I sound like a weirdo, but on Her Majesty's Secret Service is a Christmas movie. Don't fight me.
It's the best one. I don't care what anyone says.
It brings Christmas cheer to me. But you're right. You are right.
But no, very seriously, there's a lot of scenes where there's Christmas trees and Christmas lights.
Whenever they go down to the bottom of the ski hill, it's obviously Christmas for this ski resort, and they have lights, and it looks very lively. It actually, at the end of the movie, it ends up having a Christmas mood. So it does fit.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to what you're saying, the ski action sequence, very, very, very good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's awesome because they got like a professional skier to do all of this stuff, and it cuts between skiing, and you can tell when it's a green screen scene, but for the time, I think it looks really good. And then it gets really cool whenever the skier or James Bond loses the ski and has the ski on one ski and is kind of just moving with one foot down the hill, and you can tell it's a real person doing that. It's awesome.
Yeah, they paid 2 professional skiers to do that. One professional skier was shooting the scene, like holding the camera, and that's what they said. Like George Lazenby had said that the professional skier was actually skiing better and faster than him going backwards than George Lazenby was at a normal way.
Yeah, so it adds like this cool thing. If there's one thing like I can't complain about, the cinematography in this is really good. Just like how I complimented in the last one, a lot of aerial shots of people skiing, and it looks great. They actually made a device like almost looks like a hot air balloon that like flies, and like they strap someone to it to record on camera. So they built like this whole thing to get these really cool shots.
There is one silly part where a skier falls off the cliff, and but it's not like they're in distress. It's just like they're falling like straight down, like if you were standing, like
Is there a scene like this in Austin Powers? Because like it feels like it lasts for way too long of this guy falling off the cliff.
It's like
a minute. And like a minute doesn't sound like a long time, but in movie time, a minute is like forever of this guy just like this watching this doll fall down, which has a funny comparison to Thursday's movie, which we'll get to. But no, that is silly. But when they get to the bottom, oh my God, guess who's there? Tracy's there. Whoa, big surprise.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they meet up and they end up escaping together. And, this movie actually really got me in the mood to watch like a car movie because I really like when they get in the car and they go into like the ice racing and they end up on the track and they have to like, they get ramming people and everything. It's really high octane. I loved it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's even better than Eat My Dust.
Which is a hard feat to do. Maybe Grand Theft Auto will top it.
Maybe.
But here comes Tender Bond, because after this, another one of the best scenes in this movie is when Tracy and him are in the barn. I mean, after he's slept with multiple women up at the ski resort, he's like, I love you. You're the only one for me. And Bond asks her, will you marry me? And it's like, oh, wow, that does not happen.
It just sounds so foreign. It does. I mean,
Yeah.
But thank God it's a different actor again, because
yeah,
Sean Connery's asking a woman to marry him. I would be like, you are just so full of it.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it right now. I love Sean Connery, but it would come off like kind of sleazy. I don't know where it would be like, oh, I'm marrying you so I can sleep with you. That's what that character's at. But this scene, I don't know. They look like they're actually in love. This is probably George Lazenby. He does the romance really well. So
he does.
That.
He does. Yeah.
But
then the next action sequence is actually a bobsled sequence.
Yes, yeah, which is crazy nuts because they are flying down this, and I guess it's like a real track that was like closed down because it was too dangerous, and they thought it would be a good idea to film on this thing.
It shows that they are flying down that track.
Yeah, they are. And tell me how James Bond gets hit by a grenade and he just flies off the track and he walks. He's just like, oh, I'm done.
When I saw that, I'm like, oh, come on.
I know. That's one of the times in this one where I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Why?
He gets hit by a grenade and he just kind of gets up and it's like, oh, totally fine.
But no, the bobsled scene is really good. There's the big action scene where they overtake the mansion, and I think that's more towards the end. But it has some cool parts, like James Bond sliding on ice with the machine gun shooting people. It's just wacky stuff.
Yeah, they had their big full-on assault scene, and that one was good as well. Because Tracy got kidnapped by Blofeld, and they were going in to rescue her.
Yes, yeah, because there's a big avalanche, which I guess was man-created. They dropped real bombs on a mountain to get that. The making this movie just sounds nuts the more I talk about it. But yeah, they caused a real avalanche.
I think it works too because Peter Hunt, he's an editor at first, so he. I think it really shows that he wanted to keep it like super technical. That was one of his big things, is that he wanted this Bond to be as realistic as possible. He didn't want a bunch of cartoonish gadgets and things like that. So he wanted to keep it kind of realistic. So I think that's kind of what he was going for. Because I mean, there's not like these big grand, spectacles or whatever. It's like these real type of things that you can actually see. Like it's a car chase or whatever, ski chase. So.
Yeah, it's like it's real, which I can I appreciate that. I think it adds this, like, it gives this James Bond a unique flair. I guess talking about the ending, because I think with this James Bond, you have to talk about the ending.
You have to.
So there's a big wedding. It ends with a wedding. I really like the Q shows up for 2 seconds because I was like, when's Q coming in? Is this one just not have him? No, he's just like, you can talk to me anytime. If we don't see eye to eye, but you can always talk to me.
You just like, well, I know we never really gotten on in the past, but you can always talk to me, Bond.
Yeah, but Moneypenny is crying because, and I think that really shows that this Bond, at least, it had more of a connection to Moneypenny than like any of the other like movies.
I do like that moment because it's because Moneypenny is just like profusely crying, like just she's got lots of tears streaming down her face, and Bond just kind of acknowledges it and just like, hey, sorry, type of thing, and gets in the car and they drive off, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, and it ends there. We have to talk about the wedding, right? No, the movie ends very depressingly. They're driving off. They're freshly married, but Blofeld and his accomplice are there, and they shoot Tracy. She dies.
Right,
And,
she gets shot right in the head.
yeah, right in the head, and George is over her body. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it actually made me really sad. I don't think I've ever had a Bond movie make me sad, but that scene, I was like, this is actually really a big bummer.
You mean you didn't cry when Sean Connery did Yellowface?
I cried for a different reason. But no, it was good. And he quotes the song, we have all the time in the world.
It is what we've seen up to now. It is such a it's a very ballsy ending.
Yes.
It's because you don't ever, I mean, every Bond's just been like, oh, bad guy's dead and I'm gonna sleep with this girl now, and
everything's right with the world now.
Right. And this one is just like, oh my God, like my whole life has just been destroyed.
Yeah. And it obviously is really trying to set up like this grudge between him and Blofeld, like even further, like the love of his life is dead now, which is why I really wish they continued with this Bond, because I really think this storyline and him could have really gone somewhere.
Yeah, I do. But like I said, in my own headcanon,
mm-hmm.
It works really well because it's like
a finale.
Because Sean Connery quit. This one comes in. He marries.
Mm-hmm.
He marries Tracy, and then when Tracy gets murdered, he's just so distraught with grief. He can't do it anymore. He's got it. He quits.
It definitely matches your headcanon, so I could see it. It's just the ultimate bummer James Bond, I guess.
Yeah.
But one thing I don't like about this ending, the credits show, and then it just blasts the happy James Bond music.
Yeah. I was like, I saw that too. I was like, what? That's so ruined the mood.
Yeah. Why didn't they use the "We Have All the Time in the World" song again? Because that song would fit the mood. I don't know.
It's just like he's literally crying, and then like credits roll, and it's like
yeah, I think that's the dumbest. Like, okay. I guess overall, I do really like this movie. I think it's a really cool Bond. It's very different, and I can appreciate that. It does have its stumbling points. So I don't think for me it rises to the rank of at least the ones that we've seen yet. Of the best of the best. It's better than a few, but it's not a part of the best.
It's better than a couple of the ones we've seen. It's I mean, I haven't seen a Bond movie yet that I haven't liked.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
And this one, there are some slower moments, and there are some moments where I'm just thinking in my head like, where's Sean Connery? But but overall, it is a good addition, and I think it's I think for them and the situation they were put in, they had to make a very different James Bond, and I think this one is definitely different enough from the other ones.
I totally agree. And I hope you made your ranked list, Ryan, because we are ranking George Lazenby's 007 movie.
All right, let's go.
Worst one. What was the worst one? No, I'm kidding. No, but maybe this will be a special case. Whenever we finish this whole series, then we'll put all the movies together for a ranking episode for you guys. But that is far ahead into the future.
I bet that's going to be a long list.
That is a long list.
So one thing I did read is that Sean Connery actually really liked this James Bond movie.
I read that too.
And that supposedly he was, I guess Sean Connery is not really a fan of You Only Live Twice, because he said that, he would have rather have done this as a James Bond movie.
I can understand that. It's very different, but I do love You Only Live Twice.
Yeah, I do too. But he, I don't think this movie would have worked as well though. Sean Connery. So.
No, I really, maybe if it was the first Bond movie or the second, but where he was at 5 movies in, that Sean Connery's James Bond would have never done a lot of the stuff in this movie.
Yeah, but it's a shame we didn't get more. Like we said, George Lazenby, he went on to do other movies. I think one famous example is that he was in Enter the Dragon, I believe.
Yeah.
So he did do other stuff, but would never ever reach the fame that other Bonds had reached from this movie. And I think he was kind of, I mean, even he admits that he was kind of thought of himself to be like a hotshot actor, that he knew everything type of thing. Because he is still the youngest person to ever be a James Bond. He was only 29 when this movie came out.
Yeah, because they generally like to look for somebody in their 30s to early 40s.
And he had a real extraordinary life. He got to, he did the impossible. He basically fooled everybody into telling everybody he was an actor, and he got one of the biggest roles of all time. I mean, how much better could that get?
That's such a cool story to have with you for the rest of your life, I think. So no, I think that's really cool. Maybe I'll try it one day. We are getting a new Bond soon, so I'll just roll up.
Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah,
I'd go see it.
That's what the audience is saying. Oh yeah, Neiman, you could do it. Yeah, I would see it.
James Bond, how you doing?
Yeah, with my American accent. But no, I think that wraps it up for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But Ryan,
will Bond return?
Bond will return in Diamonds Are Forever. But Ryan, what are we going to talk about on Thursday?
I was looking at the calendar and I was like, since it is Zilla month, I was looking through the backlog and I really wasn't sure which one to cover next. And but I'm like, I guess we can just pull out this one. Destroy All Monsters, Nathan.
Finally.
All. Now, what could have this been leading up to? I mean, I'm sure it's got to be worth the hype. So
I'm really excited. I'm going to be really disappointed if it doesn't live up to the hype.
Oh, don't you worry. There's going to be monsters in this.
Good. That's what I want to see. I want to see monsters. I want to see lots of them. I'm excited, Ryan. But if you enjoy the podcast or if you have any recommendations, email us over at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. And you can also tweet at us at DIDFpod. All the links are in the description.
Until next time.
We have all the time